A few weeks ago, GCN released a video on these incredible looking Velo 6 disc wheels from Elitewheels. In that video, Alex, one of the presenters, said this.
What I'm actually finding from riding them is that they're actually incredibly stiff. It's certainly something that is very noticeable when you're sprinting or climbing out of the saddle.
Now, I've been riding them for the last 4 months or so on this bike here behind me, and in my opinion, that doesn't really hold up. So yeah, let's get into it. My name, as always, is Luke, and welcome back to Trace Velo. So straight off the bat here, I've been sent these wheels for free to review by the manufacturer Elitewheels, but they've had no say in the content of this video. I can sort of say what I want, really, and as you'll see, I will. But firstly,
you might notice a bit of fluff on my face, and take solace in the fact that it won't annoy you half as much as it has done me editing this whole thing with it sat there staring me in the face, because it's there nearly the whole time.
But firstly, I think there's no question here. These things look incredible. 50mm deep rim on there, 6 tapered aero spokes, minimal branding as well, which is really nice, and a lovely sheen on the bare carbon underneath the clear coat. Yeah, these things really do look the absolute business when they're on the bike. But importantly, how do they ride? Well, I'll get onto that in just a second, but firstly, here are the stats.
So fully carbon construction for these things, as mentioned, 50mm on the rim depth and 6 tapered aero spokes for each wheel. Ceramic bearings in all of the hubs, and obviously no spoke holes in the rim bed, so they're all tubeless ready. 21mm inner on that rim profile with 28mm on the outer, so pretty standard there. Weight is 1,640 grams for both wheels, so kind of on the heavy side. For comparison, their Drive 50D wheels that I've checked out previously are over 300 grams lighter, and the cost for these things is up there at $1,300, although I can get you 15% off that with a discount code that I'll pop in the description. But yeah, the big question with these is that the construction is obviously very different to a traditional spoked wheel. So how do they ride? And what about that stiffness that Alex talked about?
Is that they're actually incredibly stiff.
Well, they feel quick, that's for sure. On the flat, when you're tucked in, trying to kind of cheat the wind, it certainly feels like you carry a bit more speed, like you're held back less. And I think the sound they make, or lack thereof, kind of backs this up.
When out riding, you notice they're much quieter than kind of normal wheels. I guess with a regular spoked wheel, it really chops up the air as you're kind of pushing through, and the spokes tend to kind of vibrate and resonate with the rim, creating a hum as you ride along. With 6 huge bladed spokes for each wheel, you think they might create like a chopping sound as you're riding along, but it seems like much less turbulence is created, so they sort of pierce through the wind a lot more efficiently, and there's no resonance or hum like you get with a regular spoked wheel. They're just very quiet. It's a bit uncanny when you first ride them, actually. But if you look at the frontal area of the wheels, it seems to back up this notion.
So this is a regular spoked wheel on my bike, and this is the Velo 6. Hopefully you can see the whole wheel on the Velo 6 is completely obscured by the tyre on the rim, whereas on the spoked wheel, the spokes do jut out either side where they connect to the hub. So I imagine much less choppy, turbulent air is created with the Velo 6 wheels, therefore less aero drag. But this narrow frontal area, it does highlight a bit of a quirk with the design.
Now, when I first went out on these wheels here, I wrote down in my notes, fast and very, very, very stiff. I think sort of at the time, I just assumed they would be. I mean, look at them. They're incredible one-piece carbon wheels, massive bladed spokes. They just scream speed and efficiency. Of course, they were going to be stiff. But the more I used them, the more I realized it wasn't quite that simple. Now, not to get too bogged down in the kind of detail here, but when we're talking stiffness with a wheel set, we're talking about 3 main areas. So firstly, torsional stiffness, or the wheel's resistance to rotating when you're kind of accelerating. So does the hub and the wheel kind of rotate as one? Secondly, you've got sort of radial or vertical stiffness. So when you hit a bump, how much does the wheel deform in the vertical plane? And lastly, and kind of most importantly really, when talking about ride feel, lateral stiffness or side-to-side flex. So when you're kind of climbing out of the saddle, rocking the bike left and right.
Now, torsionally, I think these are the stiffest wheels that I have. Sprinting off the line, they feel explosive, like nothing is lost. Radially or vertically, they also feel very stiff, quite a harsh ride. ride, honestly, on the poorly maintained English B roads that I tend to frequent. But laterally, they are easily the softest, least stiff wheels that I have.
So this is what Elitewheels put on the product page about these things. So hopefully you can see it here. So they're good in crosswinds, but also far more laterally stiff than traditional spoked wheel sets. And that kind of closely mirrors what Alex at GCN said as well.
Incredibly stiff.
But hopefully I'm going to show you that's just not the case. I tried to find a way to measure it, but it's so obvious. I'm hoping it just comes across. Okay, so I've got the wheel upside down here, tire off. And what I'm going to do is just pull the rim towards me until the edge of it touches the edge of the fork here, just kind of close that gap. Okay, so I've got the wheel set up here, and hopefully you can see with very little effort, I can pull that across. I can even do it one-handed. So yeah, I tried to measure it with these set of luggage scales here, and it was difficult to sort of demonstrate, but it's about 10, 11 kilos to pull that across, but genuinely not a lot of force to do that. As a point of comparison, I've got these. They're the cheapest set of carbon wheels that Elite offer. I think these go for under 300 quid. Same 50mm deep carbon rim, but just steel spokes. So let me show you the difference. Now, admittedly, the rim is slightly narrower on these wheels. These are 25mm on the outer compared to 28 on the Velo 6. So they've got a little bit further to travel, but hopefully I can show you. If I use both hands and really give it willy, I could just about get it to touch the outside of the fork there. Oh, and one-handed, it's impossible. I mean, if I give it, shake my hand out, that is as far as I can get it to move. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I tried to measure it again with the luggage scales. It didn't really work. But they're at least 4 times as stiff laterally. Yeah, it's just, it's night and day in terms of lateral stiffness. So yeah, my experience with this wheel set, it does contradict what GCN said in their review, and also this particular line on the Elitewheels product page. And if you think about it, it does make sense, right? On a traditional spoked wheel, the spokes create a triangular truss shape, a shape that's generally very good at resisting lateral movement. Plus, manufacturers will tend to space the spokes as far apart as they can where they connect at the hub to maximize that truss shape and increase lateral stiffness as much as possible. With this Velo 6 wheel set, on the other hand, each of those bladed spokes is roughly the same thickness at the bottom as it is at the top. I think there's about 3mm in it. Something like that. So compared to a regular spoked wheel, bar the sort of inherent stiffness in that carbon layup, there's not actually that much in the design to resist that side-to-side movement. So it's no wonder they feel so soft laterally, and you can feel this when you're riding around.
Now, sprinting out of the saddle, I didn't notice it quite as much, actually. I think because the torsional stiffness is so sky high, the power gets laid down pretty well. But through some sort of sharp corners, and especially in steep climbs, it does feel a bit soft and washy, even when compared to some of the cheapest wheels that I have, to be honest. The bike wallows around a little bit and doesn't feel super tight on a varied technical route. And thinking about it, some of this might be to do with the fact that both wheels, front and rear, seem to have come out of the same mold. On a spoked wheel set, the rear tends to have a couple more spokes and a different lacing pattern to the front. Much of that is to do with managing the increased weight felt at the rear, but it also helps to increase stiffness and counteract the offset forces exerted by that chain and cassette hanging off one side of the wheel. The fact that the rear doesn't have any additional buttressing or support on this wheel set no doubt contributes to that slightly washy feeling in the climbs.
But that, in a nutshell, is the trade-off as far as I see it. These things are very, very fast and efficient, getting the power down on the flats, really strong aero characteristics, but on kind of hard climbs and tight corners, they do feel a bit soft. Much like the super stiff aero race bike that I rode out in Mallorca in the last video. Great episode, by the way, bit of a new style for me, kind of a vloggy type thing. but anyway, much like that bike, these wheels are built for a specific purpose, that being reducing drag and increasing the straight line speed. Time trials and triathlons, absolutely, but for general road riding, yeah, there are better options out there for much cheaper. Interestingly, a fellow YouTuber, Peak Talk, he's got a set of these wheels as well, and he always does some really interesting aero testing. So I'm gonna be super interested to see how these stack up against a regular set of spoked wheels from an aerodynamic perspective. Gonna be some really interesting data in there, that's for sure, so watch out for that one. Now, if you've watched me for a little while, you will know that I do really like Elite wheels. I've personally purchased and ridden several of their wheel sets for thousands of miles at this point. They legitimately do make some great value wheels for the money, but just this time the marketing around these is a little bit misleading. Still a great set of wheels, just built for a more specific purpose, if you ask me. Anywho, I hope you enjoyed this spicy little episode, maybe get embroiled in some drama, well, we'll see, right? Anyway, subscribe if you like this kind of thing. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this thing I've produced, and do include baguettes emojis in the comments, because the number of baguettes I see is directly proportional to the happiness that I have posting a video. Right, anyway, enough of that. See you next time. Ciao!
It's the bonus clip time.
Right, so last week I actually emailed my contact at Elitewheels to kind of pull them up on that claim of lateral stiffness on their product page. And I noticed, actually, I've just been editing, I'm nearly done actually. I noticed that they must have changed it last night. So this is the product description now. So what are we, 10th of July, 2024? Yeah, here we go. So aesthetically pleasing, exceptionally aerodynamic, nothing about lateral stiffness. They've removed a paragraph there. So, I mean, I got to give them props, I suppose, for listening to customer feedback. They never mentioned to me, they haven't emailed me to say they've updated it or anything like that. Maybe it was nothing to do with me. But there we go. I don't think so. I'm changing the industry in front of your very eyes, ladies and gentlemen. Right, that's it. I guess we're done. Also, big shout out GCN. Right, see you next time, ciao.